Okay, we'll get started. So, as I said, today's topic is pathway to practice as a nurse in Alberta. And and obviously my information is there. So at any point, I'm sure that questions may arise that I may or may not get to today, or things may pop up later, but my contact information is there. And again, if you want to jot down my email, you are welcome to email me at any point, and I'll be glad to answer any personal questions. Sometimes there's very specific questions that relate to the individual, and I will be glad to address those for you. Hang on a second, I'm just going to move my mouth. Oops. There we go. And always, when we do presentations at the Alberta Association of Nurses, we always like to have a land acknowledgement. So, in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, the Alberta Association of Nurses acknowledge that we live, work, and play across the province of Alberta. We acknowledge that the traditional lands of the First Nations, Treaty 6, 7, and 8, Métis regions, and the Inuit people. We recognize the Indigenous people who for generations have been the traditional keepers of these lands. We acknowledge health disparity, and we commit to responding to the 7 health-related calls to action detailed within the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's report. So first of all, I just want to recap a little bit about what's the difference. Many times it is important to understand that in Canada, and especially in Alberta, we have different sectors that care for nurses or respond to nursing needs in different ways. And when coming to Canada, it's important to sort of distinguish what the difference is. So I'm just going to recap that for you. So first of all, we have the professional associations, and their purpose is to advance the profession of nurses and nursing. And the participation in that is completely voluntary. You're not required to do it as you are in some of the other sectors. And the audience or the people for whom that is demonstrated or to address is nurses and the nursing profession. So that's really what the Association of Nurses is all about. And then we have the regulators. So the regulators are people like CRNA or CLPNA, and these are the bodies that license nurses. And their overall mandate is really to protect the public and ensure that nursing practice is done in a way that is ethical and regulated and systematic, and make sure that we, as nurses, provide the best nursing care possible to the public and as a profession. The participation in that is required. So as nurses in Alberta and across Canada, we can't practice or even call ourselves nurses without being a member of a regulated body. So somebody could have gone to a nursing school or passed nursing exams, but they can't call themselves an RN or a nurse practitioner or a psychiatric nurse or a midwife if they're not actually licensed with one of the regulatory bodies. And the primary audience for those is the public. Now, unions are different again. Not every place that a nurse works will have a governing union. Some employers don't actually have a union coverage, but the majority will. And unions work on behalf of union members, which are generally nurses. For nursing unions, I should make sure that that's clear. And the responsibility or the purpose of unions is to provide or ensure that the employers are providing a safe and equitable workplace. I'm going to talk a little bit later about how they're also involved with contract negotiations and some other things. But they are come alongside and advocate for nurses from that perspective. Membership is required in facilities or in employer situations where there is a union involved. Now, the employer themselves, so that would be big employers like AHS or Covenant Health, or smaller employers like some of the smaller long-term care facilities or private healthcare settings, or even smaller clinics. They hire and pay nurses for the work that they provide. It's voluntary in the sense that a nurse can choose to accept a position. Many of us think that it's not voluntary because we need to work, but it is voluntary in the sense that we can choose to accept or decline a position. And the overall mandate for the employer is to provide patient care. That is really what that is designed for. So what's the purpose of the regulators? I touched on this briefly, but I'm just going to quickly review that. So the regulators' functions include nursing licensure. So regardless of which particular licensing body it is, and I've kind of got a few of them at the bottom of the slide here, we've got CRNA, which is the registration body for RNs and nurse practitioners, and then the College of Licensed Practical Nurses of Alberta, and also psychiatric nurses. There's also the College of Midwives, which isn't demonstrated here, but that's also another Alberta licensing body. So they are responsible for licensing. They also are responsible for practice conduct and ethical standards. So if there was a complaint brought against a particular nurse, either by a member of the public or by the employer or some other individual, that complaint would generally go to the college of that particular practicing person. And that's where that inquiry would go and be followed up there. They also deal with continuing competence requirements. So anyone that has been registered with one of these colleges for some time, when it comes to renewing your license each year, there is a section that talks about continuing competence or continuing education. So we are required as registered professionals to make sure that we stay current in our practice and maintain currency and continuing competence. They address complaints and they also manage disciplinary action, which is kind of tied back to practice conduct and ethical standards. And they do all of these things to protect the public. So they want to make sure that those that are licensed or registered under them are serving the public by ensuring that all professionals under their jurisdiction, so whether it's psychiatric nurses, midwives, licensed practical nurses, registered nurses, or nurse practitioners, are practicing to the best standards possible within the framework to make sure that we are giving the best practice that we possibly can. So what is the role of the employers? So as I mentioned, they hire nurses from all professions, and I've got them listed for you there. And they also provide the equipment, the job training, and they're also required to provide a safe work environment. They also provide high quality health to Albertans. And again, that's part of the mandate of the employers. And I've just got a few logos there just to give you some idea of the variety of healthcare providers or employers that there are in Alberta. And again, just a quick recap is what is the purpose of the unions? So the unions are there to represent union members. So there are different unions for different sectors of the nursing profession. So the United Nurses of Alberta generally covers the RNs. And then we've got AUP and QP, which generally cover the LPNs and other professionals. And we also have HSA, which cover the registered psychiatric nurses, but they cover many of the healthcare professionals outside of, so people like pharmacists or physiotherapists and other kinds of healthcare workers as well. But the UNA particularly is a union that's specific to nursing individuals. So what do they do? So collective bargaining is a process that looks specifically at the wages and contracts for nurses within a particular organization. The one that you may or may not have heard of, particularly, is when it comes to AHS, which is the larger employer within Alberta, and they advocate for fair wages and benefits. They also are involved with safe and healthy workplaces. Nursing at times can have vulnerabilities for safety, and that can include the equipment, it can include workload, and it can include things like aggressive patients or family members. They also advocate for and accompany members when they have to meet with the employer. So sometimes there may be conflict between an employer and the employee, and a meeting may be required. And at that point, the union will offer a union steward to accompany and advocate for the employee. Let me just make that clear. So what's the role of the Alberta Association of Nurses? So AAN's purpose is to collectively advocate and provide for, let me say that again. AAN's purpose is to collectively advocate for and provide meaningful connection, professional development, and for all members in the nursing profession. So when AAN looks at things, we look at what is the best thing for nursing as a whole. And we look at all nurses in all different types of nursing and all the different roles. So rather than, one specific role of nursing, we encompass all nurses in all types of nursing roles and cover all of those kinds of things, and are very encompassing for what nursing is holistically. And we connect members and provide services and supports and resources to help members achieve professional excellence. So we overlap with many of the factors that the others do, but we are unique in that it is about nursing and nurses. And we work collaboratively with the regulators and unions, and also with government and other associations. And we also work with special nursing interest groups. So that could be related to a specific type of nursing, like gerontology or hospice or trauma care or various types of nursing, or it could be related to interest groups like that may be localized or regional, like, for example, it could be rural, or it could be urban, or it could be the ethnic groups, for example. So there's a whole variety of interest groups that can be collective within that. So internationally educated nurses and the IN navigator support. So that comes back down to looking at what my role encompasses as the IN navigator. So one of the things is personalized navigation and website resources. It was, when I was reviewing this slide, it was, how do I encompass all of the different things that I do into a single slide? But this is just a quick snapshot about some of the things that are part of my role. And one of the main things is looking at registration processes. So it's helping nurses that are in various stages of registration process. And that can be if they have yet to come to Canada, or if they've come to Canada and are looking at that. And the nurses that I meet with might be new to practice, they may be partway through the process, they may have been recently practicing in their home country, or they could be what we call domestic internationally educated nurses who've been in the country a while but haven't practiced in some time. So there's quite a broad variety. There's also a lot to do with resume and interviewing and applying tips. And we also have an AAN Career Center on our website as well. We give information and additional education and professional development. So there's a lot that goes into where's that person now and what information do they need about additional education and looking at professional development. So where are you now and where do you want to get to? And what does that look like? What are your goals? What kind of nursing do you want to do? And where are you heading? And what steps do you need to take to get there? There's a lot that can go into NCLEX preparation, and I have lots of resources that I often share to do with that. There's links to cultural and settlement agencies because a lot of time, as I'm sure many of you on this webinar call, when you come to a new country, it can be very overwhelming. It can be very lonely and very isolating. And there's lots of groups that can help with that particular phase of things. And I have lots of contacts with that. I myself was an internationally educated nurse, although quite some time ago now, but I do remember what it was like coming to a new country. And coming from the UK, I don't think I was really very well prepared for how different it actually was. I also help with employment strategies. One of the big things is talking to individuals about what kind of nursing are you interested in? Where do you want to head? What's realistic? What is your background? How do you make those steps? What things have you thought about? What maybe there's an area somebody hasn't thought about? What's going to be the steps that you need? What micro courses might be helpful? So there's lots of things that I do in that area. And then finally, I've included SMART goal setting because sometimes it can be incredibly overwhelming to think, well, where do I even start? I've got registration to think about, or I've got immigration to think about, or I've applied to lots of jobs and I really feel overwhelmed. So a big thing that I'll do is help with SMART goal setting, small goals and strategic goals that make things realistic. And from that, then we can start to see some successes. So the next part is the goal to help people who want to practice as a nurse. And I'm going to skip through this slide fairly quickly because we have talked about it. And just to highlight that there is quite a variety of different kinds of nurses. And again, differing processes for the RN and the LPN. As I mentioned, there are more than just RNs and LPNs. We do have nurse practitioners, and there's an increasing number that I'm getting contacts from now, especially from certain countries. And there's definitely nurses with a psychiatric background, or what we call RPNs. That's how some of you may have heard me clarify. It's because in some areas, the term RPN can be linked with what we would call an LPN or a practical nurse, but we would call an RPN a registered psychiatric nurse. So there are those nurses, and there's also midwives. And so we do deal with a variety, but the majority of nurses fall into these two categories. So that's what I'm going to focus on in this slide today. There is two pathways. And one is the registered nurse pathway and the licensed practical nurse pathway. The other thing I want to highlight here is you can actually apply in both pathways, and sometimes nurses do that. And so I'm just highlighting that. I'll let you just review that slide. And so the RN application is through the College of Nurses of Alberta. And that is, and what you would do is you just go on and log on and start an account. You create a profile and confirm your identity. It's fairly intuitive. So this slide just reviews that fairly straightforwardly. And that would be an important part of things. So you create an account. It involves confirming what we call confirming competency. It demonstrates your eligibility. So that basically means that you have actually been a nurse at some point and not, a policeman or a teacher or some other kind of profession. Then you are ready to prepare for practice, and there is a fee that's associated with that. And so there are a couple of different pathways, and I'll just explain that a little bit. So the NCLEX exam is now the standardized exam that is used as part of the RN registration in Canada, except for Quebec, which uses a slightly different process. But most of the other provinces now, NCLEX has been adopted as a standard exam. So they're going to be asking about if somebody has passed NCLEX already and has active registration. The other thing that will be looked at is what country is the individual from. Over time, there are certain countries that have a faster pathway. Although I don't represent CRNA, my understanding, the reason for this is that there have been multiple applicants over time that have applied from these countries, and there is more familiarity of what the education is from these countries and the standardization and the comparability with these countries. And that's why that these countries have a recognized pathway or comparability. I would anticipate as certain countries have more nurses coming from them and there's more consistency of what their educational, they've done more nurses from those countries. There may be others that are added to the list, but this is what they are at this time. Then there's an equivalent education verified. So if, especially when they're outside of this, this particular list, there's a pathway where your education from your home country is reviewed, and that can be through NNAS, and they will just make sure that the education that you had in your home country is consistent. So the National Nursing Assessment Service, which is NNAS, does a report, and they just report that you have comparable or somewhat comparable education in your home country to what nurses in Canada receive. And so once that's completed, then you can be given given a option or a permission to write NCLEX. And once you have written and passed NCLEX, then you can proceed to registration. So finally, once that has occurred, then it's, do you meet currency of practice and do you meet English language proficiency? I'm just going to touch on English language proficiency because there are a couple of standards. ITLS is probably the most current, but sometimes I will have people that will message me about their ITLS proficiency, and we do work on that. The one thing I will encourage people is when you are practicing for that particular testing, make sure that you are practicing your English, not just with people from your home country or with other people with English as a second language, and also not just in settings where slang English is used. You really want to make sure that you're getting some professional English language so that when you come to do the testing, that you're using good English and not slang English. So that can be really important as well. And I can definitely give some suggestions and some feedback on that. So currency of practice for registration, I want to take some time just to review this because it is shifting and changing, and I've updated this slide to reflect the same. And it's an area that I do get a lot of questions about. So currency of practice for registered nurses. So you will need to meet the currency of practice requirement if you've completed one of the following within the last 5 years prior to application. There has been a period of time where this has been a little bit different. So I'm just going to quickly review. So one of the currencies of practice is that you've successfully completed an approved nursing education program, and that can include one of our bridging programs. The other one is completed at least 250 hours of nursing practice, and that includes both RN and MPN hours. However, this is changing, or I should say, reverting back to something that it had previously been. So after this particular registration year finishes, so as of October 1st of this coming practice year, so October 1st in 2025, it is going to change. And it is going to be 450 hours in the last 2 years, or 1,125 hours in the last 5 years. Now, I know this is going to be quite a challenge for many of the people on this call, but one thing I want to point out is that the 1125 hours in 5 years is what the standard was for many, many years for CRNA. And it actually shifted down to the 250 a couple of years ago. So this is actually reverting back to what it had previously been. So it's something that I'm sure that if you have concerns or questions, you're definitely welcome to contact both the CRNA, or I can also help you if you want to look at, how am I going to meet this, or what are my options, or how are we going to navigate that? Because there are a few ways to do that. One of the ways, obviously, is looking at employment. It is over a period of 5 years. So definitely having education in that time period can help with that. Or you can have 450 in the last 2 years. The other way is completing a registered nurse's Canadian competency assessment program, which is formerly known as a refresher program. Also completing a recognized bridging program or a re-entry to practice program, again, a refresher program. Completing nursing courses at a college or university can also be included, but it's at the discretion of the registrar. So it depends on what those programs are and whether they're nursing related or what they may be. The other requirements in terms of demonstrating eligibility, again, it's meeting that post-secondary education requirement. You also need to have a criminal record check, and those are done online, and the CRNA website will help you follow that. You also need to give an attestation that to the truth of the information provided. So this is also ethically something really important. So there is a piece on the application where you check off or say that I attest to that everything that I have said is truthful. So that is really important. So it is very important that ethically that everything that you've said on your application is true. To answer questions, you also have to say that you are fit in character and fit to practice. So that includes your mental and physical health, that you are able to practice as a nurse in stressful, mentally and physically stressfully demanding situations. There is also a jurisprudence course that is required, and this is true of LPNs and RNs. Jurisprudence is a course that covers legal matters, and it's something that is required in Canada, and it is also something that there will be a link on the CRNA website for that. And you also have to complete a course that is mandatory to protect patients from sexual abuse and misconduct. These are all required, and there are links to complete those within the application. And finally, you need to now purchase a liability protection insurance. Now, this is offered through the Canadian Nurse Protective Society, or CNP. The other thing, though, is it can be purchased directly through CNPS, but if you are a member of the Alberta Association of Nurses, we actually offer a group rate, and you can get a discount on your liability insurance as an AAN member. So something to consider there. So occasionally, what happens if you don't meet the requirements? So very occasionally, sometimes there will be a holdup or something that isn't met. So what happens then? The first thing is don't panic. And so contact CRNA and find out what piece is missing. What is the part of the application that didn't meet the requirements? And find out what needs to be done to meet those requirements. Once that is done, if you need help with that piece, or you have questions, or it wasn't clear from CRNA, you are welcome to contact me, and I will gladly help in terms of, I can't necessarily fix the decision, but I can definitely help, bridge that gap, or look at options, or say what's next in terms of what it might be. And that will vary, of course, depending on the reason for that. I must add that doesn't happen very often, that's for sure. So quickly, we're just going to run through the LPN application. So again, I did say that it is possible to apply for both at once, but not everybody, needs to do that or wants to do that. And I can definitely discuss when that's, a good idea or not, depending on individuals' background and that kind of thing. So the LPN application is through the College of Licensed Practical Nurses of Alberta. And just as a side note, the healthcare aides are also going to be registered with CLPNA in the near future as well. So there's two pathways to apply, and they apply through the NNAS, the National Nursing Assessment Service, to get their background, or they can go directly through CLPNA. So they need to get started. They could just go to the CLPNA website, they start an IEN application, or they can get an NAS report. And the NAS report is just gives that comparability of the education from their home country. And then all documents are provided directly to CLPNA. Very similarly to CRNA, they then provide ID, a criminal record check, provide education and credentials assessment. That's, again, would be the NNAS assessment or their own paperwork. You provide verification of previous registration. So if you have worked as the equivalent of a practical nurse in your home country, meet actively engaged requirements. Again, you've got the jurisprudence and protection from sexual misconduct exam, or the course to go with that, and provide proof of English language proficiency. So those pieces are very similar to the CRNA. And again, what happens if I don't meet the requirements? So if there's something missing or a step that needs to be reviewed, you would contact CLPNA, find out what that is, and then see what needs to be done to fill that gap. And again, if you have concerns or questions, or if there's an education component or something like that, I certainly don't mind reviewing that information with people. And again, it's not something that happens very commonly. These are things that I really want to now review with people because I think it's incredibly important when understanding what nursing practice means in Canada and in Alberta specifically. Because I think there are assumptions or misunderstandings about why we go to so much length to go through these processes for registration and practice and bridging programs and all of these things when people have worked successfully as a nurse in their home country. Because there are some things that, as nurses in Canada, are taken very seriously. And one of these things, first of all, is independent practice. Nurses in Canada, regardless of whether LPN or RN, nurse practitioner, midwife, or registered psychiatric nurses, are considered to be independent in their practice. They're also expected to have critical thinking. They need to make assessments and recommendations. So not just following orders or carrying out something from somebody else's recommendations, but making an assessment on a patient and making nursing recommendations as a result of that. Their responsibility for safety, their patients and themselves in the environment. Understanding ethics and ethical principles. We work around a framework of patient-centered care and advocacy for patients, for families, for our peers, and for healthcare. Practice reflection is incredibly important. So to tie your professional development to your learning needs. So whenever we are developing as our learning practices, so when we're reviewing our practice, when we are developing learning needs, it needs to be tied to what our practice is. And assessing our practice is essential. So that's when, I often meet with people and ask them about their goals and ask them about their practice. This is what I'm often looking at. So regardless of whether somebody is still in their home country or here in Canada or hasn't practiced for a while or is freshly out of a program, it's always looking at what is your current practice? Where are you heading? How confident are you feeling? What can we do to add to something? Or the area that you want to work in, like how ready are you for that area? Additional learnings. So again, there's lots of additional learnings that can be free. There are some that aren't, but there are some free ones. And I really encourage everybody that is on this call that hasn't done these to have a look at them. So the nextgenu.org is a free online education in health sciences and healthcare, and it is required for certain sectors. So it's definitely worth having a look at. If you've got a pen and paper, jot that down, but you're welcome to also contact me. CRNA and CLPNA members have access to learning modules. So a lot of the websites for the professional organizations here at AAN have lots of resources and access to learnings as well. So please take advantage for all the things that you can access. Many private companies and organizations provide nursing courses and certifications. So it's always good to take advantage of any opportunities you have to have additional courses and certifications. So both the Alberta Association of Nurses and we also now, just as a reference point while I think about it, is with your AAN membership, you also get a CNA membership. So a Canadian Nurses Association membership with your Alberta Association membership, which will give you access to a whole variety of webinars, courses, and certifications. But on top of that, there's also ONET, which is the Alberta Registered Nurses Education Trust, and they also have a whole variety of learnings and learning opportunities. So definitely check out all these resources that are available to you, and that will definitely be worth looking at. Anyone that has contacted me has likely heard me talk about the advantage of post-secondary programs for IENs. It's becoming the baseline so much now for anyone returning to practice. And as I've said, is that when you step into Canadian nursing, there are some subtle differences, and many employers are looking for the graduates from bridging programs. And there is a variety of excellent programs now, and I've got them listed here. Bow Valley College has now also been acknowledged by CRNA as an accredited program as well. So they have the path to practice for IENs, but they also have some micro-credentialing courses. They're developing one for rural practice and for geriatrics, I believe. So there are many programs. There's many beyond this. And I can definitely give lots of resources to micro-credentialing courses for specialty courses, but I can't speak enough or highly enough about the opportunity for bridging programs. I've yet to speak to someone who has done a bridging program and didn't find the value of it. And if finances are an issue, then there's definitely opportunities for assistance with financing. So I'd be glad to talk to people about that if that is a challenge. But it's definitely worth the investment. I think it's always important to consider your journey and your investment in your nursing career as a long-term investment rather than a short-term one. So just to touch on some of the financial supports, RPAP, or the Rural Health Professions Action Plan, has a bursary for internationally educated nurses. And I say this is a bursary. It's really important to recognize that there is a significant need in rural health. And rural health is a specialty in and of itself. It is highly valuable. And within this, there's an opportunity to dedicate our careers in rural health nursing. With this bursary, there's the opportunity to do bridging programs in return for dedicating your nursing for a period of time post-graduation to be stable and working in a rural setting. It would be your responsibility to find that employment and to stay stable in that environment, but it does come with an excellent opportunity for a bursary to support additional learnings in that. But rural health can be very rewarding. Small communities can be an exciting place and to live and to work, but it is a very specialized kind of nursing in and of itself. And when I first came to Canada, that's a type of community that I worked in, and I would love to talk to people about that opportunity. There's also low interest loans and from the government of Alberta through the WIML micro lending. There's also additional support that can be available from the government through Braden Works as well. So there is some opportunity. And there's also other kind of working opportunities that some people take on. Some people will work as a healthcare aide to support their learnings or other kinds of opportunities as well. So it's definitely worth investigating, but don't write off the opportunity of additional learnings or bridging programs simply with the blanket idea that I can't afford it, because many people have been very successful doing bridging programs and found ways to accommodate that. So you have your license, now what? So many times a large proportion of people that will come to me have got their license and are excited, and now what? Or are struggling to find positions. So one of the next phases is creating a really good resume. Sometimes resumes can be overwordy or need a little tweaking, then it's about helping find employment opportunities to start the application process. And what does that look like? And matching skills and preparing for an interview. There are some various settlement agencies that can also help with this. I can definitely help refer people to that do some work to really help navigate and practice skills and practice interviews. I certainly don't mind looking at people's resumes or tweaking it. Having been a hiring manager and overseeing that for many years, I've got a lot of experience of looking at resumes and picking things out, or, it's knowing what will jump both on the positive and the less positive. So that can be really helpful. Also, when looking for employment opportunities, it's knowing where to look. And sometimes just sending out a bunch of resumes is not always as effective as cherry picking the right types of employer for the types of skills that you actually have and helping to fine tune that. And that's where the smart decisions can come in, and being selective and, really looking at where's going to be my best option, where am I going to be most successful. If all my experience and skills have been in gerontology, then applying for an ICU position is probably not what I'm going to be the most successful at. And vice versa, if I've got really good, current ICU skills, how do I get that in front of somebody and be the most successful? So those are some of the things that I'll sometimes help with people, and to also start the application process for each opportunity, and how to create an effective cover letter can be really helpful. Also, interview preparing. Sometimes it can be intimidating. Knowing culturally what the differences may be can be really helpful. And again, some of these local settlement agencies can be helpful, but if you need any help with that, that's something that can be really important. So creating your resume. Many cultural and employment centers do offer help, and I definitely have some resources for that. Also, the AAN has a career center, and if you jot down this website, if you don't already have it, there's definitely some resources there. Creating a good cover letter can be helpful, but you don't need it for every application, and it's also important to know when and where and why to use it. The other thing is, and most people nowadays, and those that have been sent to me have been really good, it's gone are the days of lengthy resumes. And a one pager is ideal. It shouldn't be too many, and 2 is maximum. You want to have a list of references available, but they don't necessarily need to be on the resume itself. This would be an example of what a resume, excuse me, a resume sample would look like. It just gives you an outline. It doesn't need to be overly detailed with every single detail of everything you've done. The other thing is you don't need to include a photo. I think culturally that has been some people's practice, but here in Canada, it's not something that we generally do. And it does, as I say, it doesn't need to be more than 2 pages. The other big thing I want to highlight is don't forget to proofread it or check it for typos, for grammar and spelling. That's something that will be a big turn off to people if they receive a resume that is full of mistakes. Cover letters, again, knowing when to include one, the format, and what to say. It needs to be specific to the job that you're applying for, and rather than a form letter. And you don't need to include one every time, but I can send information on that. And what to say. It needs to be about, if you see a particular position that really, really is good, that really fits your skills, that you have experience in, that you can share, though, then it can be really valuable to highlight why you would be the best person for that position. If it's an online application through a portal, but sometimes you don't necessarily need it. Again, this is just giving some highlights as to what a cover letter would include. Fairly straightforward. Use a formal salutation. This is a formal letter and not lengthy. This doesn't need to include things that's already in your resume or personal details or your hobbies or things like that. It's going to be just about why you would be a good fit for this particular position. And it's always good to have somebody read over your cover letter. Again, using formal format, an introduction paragraph, why you're the best candidate, why this particular unit and facility is right fit for you. And then just a summary, and thank you. You can reuse your cover letter, but do change the details. You don't want to just reuse it the same way that you would your resume. You can use the basic format. And you can use personal experiences about clinical nursing or about that's related to the position, but you don't need to say I went surfing in Hawaii, that kind of thing, and don't ramble or rewrite the resume. So finding employment opportunities, I want to spend a little bit on this particular thing. We're almost out of time, so I'm not going to spend too long. But oftentimes, my experience so far has been that the majority of IENs are focused a lot around AHS as an employer, which is not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. They're definitely the largest of employers, but they're certainly not the only one. And depending on the types of nursing that you're looking at, there are a much broader variety. So just to highlight here, we've got some private care providers. Covenant Health, especially up in the more northern sectors, is the second largest care provider. But we also have a lot of long-term health continuing care providers throughout the province, but are definitely in the urban areas as well. But there's also things like specialty clinics that are scattered throughout the province. Another one is correctional services, which is a specialty area in and of itself that people often don't think of. So there is a diversity, and having a think or brainstorming about those options is definitely thinking about all the kinds of nursing that can be provided. Correctional services has quite a broad aspect of what they actually provide, and finding out about the types of nursing they actually provide within their facilities is actually quite interesting in terms of what they're actually doing there. So again, how do you apply? Obviously, there's career pages, there's employer websites, Indeed, LinkedIn, the various websites that may be involved in terms of that piece. Really thinking about I always encourage people to have a goal about what kind of nursing is the best fit for me. What am I most passionate about? Because some people are really passionate about acute med surg. Other people are passionate about rural nursing. Other people are passionate about geriatric and dementia care. Other people are passionate about working in clinics or want to work in the OR. Now, having said that, they may say, okay, I may not be able to get there immediately, but what are the steps I can take to get there? And how do I get into getting a job? So these are some of the conversations that I'll often have with people. So having conversations and working towards that can be really helpful, because otherwise it can feel like, well, how do I get on the train to get there? And that's where I love to help people to develop a plan and get into the system. How do I get into having a job, or how do I get into, the system with AHS or another employer? So I'll be glad to have conversations about that. So finally, there is my contact information, and I would be glad to connect with individuals in terms of what that journey might look like. And different people are always on different ends of that journey. Sometimes you might be just, coming from a different country. You may be still in a home country. You may not have nursed for a while, or you may be struggling to find a job, or you may be one of our partners and want to know what I'm doing. At any point, don't hesitate to reach out, because the goal is to have very skilled nurses getting into nursing. Could somebody just turn their microphone off? Get into nursing and be part of a great nursing workforce. I have so many IEN colleagues that are now doing incredible things in Alberta. And that's where the opportunity is for so many of you, just pressing forward. And I am hoping to start a community of practice for internationally educated nurses within the next month. So one of the next Zooms that webinars that you will see will be specifically for that. So we are at the end of times, but I am going to stop sharing, if I can
Lydia, sorry, Lydia, there are a couple of questions in the chat. I'm not sure if you've got time to
yes, absolutely.
Let do you want to have a look, or do you want me to read a couple of them
if
out?
you can read them, that would be great, since people can't.
Okay. So can the bridging program be used as currency of practice?
Yes, it can, but what I would definitely suggest is that is my screen still black, or can you see me?
No, we can see.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you, but we can still see your screen as well.
Okay, let me just stop sharing my screen. What I would say is that it can, but I would definitely be having conversations with CRNA, because it will depend on the total number of hours during that registration period, depending on the length of the program and things like that. But generally, the answer would be yes. But because I don't represent CRNA, I would definitely ask, within that. But most programs, because it would depend a little bit on the length of the program as well, as to what that looks like.
Awesome. Thanks, Lydia. Can job experience in Canada as a personal support worker be included in a resume or cover letter?
As a personal support worker in Canada, you can definitely include them on there. What I would do, though, it depends on if it adds, excuse me, I'm just going to drink. If it adds significantly to the length, what I would do is I would put it on there as a role, but not get into what sometimes people will do is put the job and then list all the tasks that they did under that job. So I would really depend on, you might put that you did that and the dates, but maybe if it's making your resume quite long, not list too many of the skills that you did under that task, unless they're really unique, because otherwise what happens is people will, you've got a lengthy part of your resume about the tasks you did as a personal support worker, whereas most people in healthcare are going to have an idea what that might have included, and you're taking up a big piece of your resume on that. Does that make sense for the person that asked it? Hopefully it does.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can the bridging program be done online?
Again, yes, and it depends on the school. There might be people from individual schools that are on this call, but it will vary a little bit depending on the particular program that you're enrolled in. And for most of the bridging programs, there can be portions that are done online. There is likely to be certain portions that need to be attended or may need to be done in person. The ultimate thing is to have a conversation with the actual program itself. Some are done more remotely than others, but definitely in this nowadays, much more is available online than has been previously.
Awesome. So are IENs able to make or to apply from their home country, or is a Canadian address still required?
For the bridging program?
Yeah, Mavis.
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm not 100% sure on that. I would apply and see the response that you get, and I will ask that question and post it on their Facebook page. I think you may need to be in Canada to do the bridging program, but I will find out. That's a really good question.
We'll send a link out to the webinar to everyone that has attended today or that registered for the event. So everybody will get a copy of that. Lydia, will you share your slide deck as well?
Yes, I can definitely do that.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yes. Are there any other questions?
I'm just scrolling through. Just give me one moment.
Oh.
So what is the eligibility to become a member of AAN or CNA, and how can we apply? I can answer this one.
Yeah.
Membership with the Alberta Association is voluntary. It is not a requirement. When you are an active member of the association, you also now receive a general CNA or Canadian Nurses Association membership. So you get memberships into two associations, provincially, federally, by joining the AAN, and that's something that has just started this year. You can just go online and to our website, www.albertanursing.ca, and across the top, there's a dark blue banner, and I think it says become a member now or join now. I'm not looking at it, sorry. So just have a look at that, and yeah, we would love to have you. We'd love to support you in any way we can. And so that's all you need to do to become a member of both of those organizations. Do you know anything about the requirements of the Bow Valley program, Lydia?
The most part is that as long as you need to have at least a, the immigration status, you need to have at least a PR or a student visa. You at any point in that, you don't have to be registered as a nurse to apply because it is a bridging status. So I'm not sure if they currently have a wait list, but I would definitely, you can contact me and I can give you their link, or you can go directly to Bow Valley's website and apply. And if you have previously been registered as a nurse in another country, they have both LPN and RN education. So I would definitely contact them. They have some very good programs. They also do what they call the Path to Practice with CRIAC, which is a great initiative. And they do simulation with avatars and a whole variety of modern techniques in terms of their learning. So they've got quite a neat program. So, and they do some remote learning too, so some online learning. So it's definitely worth investigating.
Is there anything else in the chat that I may have missed that somebody feel free to come off mute and ask your question? I just kind of scrolling through and trying to.
Yeah, if we've missed anybody's questions because we are over time, please feel free. Feel free to contact me. I see that Megan has put some information in about pass for nurses and put their, so Megan has put in some information about pass and that they have a new case manager.
Can you please address AF's question? I just want to hear about what could she does. Like, I passed the NCLEX. What are the requirements to register for the Bow Valley to become RN?
Can you say that again? I didn't quite hear what you were saying.
Can you please address AF's question? Her name is Agnes. She said she passed exam, the NCLEX exam. What are the requirements to register for Bow Valley to become RN?
If she's passed the NCLEX exam, there's no reason why she. She can register for Bow Valley. Yeah, she just needs she can just basically go online and register for the Bow Valley College bridging program, the path to practice program.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it says there's another one here. Is bridging program for NCLEX passes outside Canada? Okay. Yeah, I think most of the bridging programs you do need to be within Canada. If somebody has interest in education from outside Canada, just send me an email and I will get in touch with you regarding options for that. Oh, this is a good one. Do NCLEX passes need to do a bridging program? If I haven't answered that in the slides, that is a really good question. And what I would suggest is that in most cases, it can still be very valuable because the NCLEX definitely gives you that pass for knowledge, but the bridging programs give you actual practice of nursing. And there can be clinical skills and actual practice that is Canadian-based nursing in the field that is actually a little bit different. And I think what I might do is I might chat to the colleges and have some graduates of bridging programs actually do a session with us. I think that might be helpful and give some feedback. So for one of our future sessions, that might be a really helpful thing to do so that people have an understanding from, not from me, but from people that have completed a bridging program as to the value of it. Thank you. I see Kim's heart going up there. Yeah, because I think if I was in your shoes, that's who I would want to hear from, not just, Lydia saying it's a good idea. So yeah. Yeah. So at this point, because I'm going to need to get on to some other appointments, if I have missed your question, I just want to thank everybody for taking the time and participating. I really value your time, and it has been a pleasure and a delight to spend this time with you. And if you have additional questions, Durang was on, I see from Mount Royal, there's been a lot of education people on here. And so if anyone has any additional questions, there's a lot of people that have participated. There's lots of opportunities. Feel free to contact me. And I don't want anyone to go away feeling like their question wasn't answered or they've got left with more questions. Please reach out and I will get back to you personally and make sure that that you don't have unanswered questions. And as I said, there's lots of education. And I really want to thank the educators. I see that Jarang has and Paula has lots of been answering in the questions, and Megan and lots of the people from RPAP have also answered. So I really appreciate everybody's participation, and Abigail and so many people that have contributed today. So thank you so much.